Travis DeCuire mentioned that in the COVID era, they felt like they really weren't able to operate to their best level. There's certain things you don't know when you can't talk to a person in person. He felt like they were missing something. And while they were never bad, they always felt like they could be much better. He felt like they got it back to the way they wanted just last year. Patterson the rebound. He'll run this out. Up with Montana. And up to the NCAA Tournament.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Basketball in the Mountains. This is episode 35. I am your host, as always, Tyler King with the Denver Gazette, and we are rolling right along, continuing with our 2025-26 season preview series. This is our third episode or in that series. If you missed it last week, we interviewed Wyoming coach Sundance Wicks and Utah Valley coach Todd Phillips. I appreciate both of them for coming on to preview their respective seasons in Laramie and Orem. So should be, if you missed them, there's great conversations. Looking forward to watching both those teams this year. And we've got another coaching guest this week as we on this latest episode as we get ready for the season, which is less than a month away here for college basketball. And we've got another reigning coach of the year on the show in their conference, and that is Travis DeCuire at Montana. Coach, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
All right, Coach. Well, obviously, it was a big season for you guys last year at Montana with the Grizz. You made the NCAA tournament for the third time in your tenure. You're heading into year 12 now. I mean, you guys just had a really impressive run to end the season. I think starting on January 20th, you went 14-2 in your last 16 games, and that was the only losses were, I think, you lost in overtime to Portland State, and then obviously in the NCAA tournament to Wisconsin. Just how fun was the ride last year, and kind of what's the carryover been like for you guys throughout the summer, and now as you gotten into the fall here, getting ready for another campaign of basketball?
Well, the ride was stressful at the time. You know, the streak began one game out of first place, and we hadn't been playing very well. We actually had two embarrassing losses in terms of the way that we lost. And I think that woke us up and brought us together and created some focus in regards to some of the things that mattered when you want to win. And we found a way to win a couple close ones after that. And then each game we just kept getting better. So there was a high level of stress during that ride. And when we lost at Portland State in overtime, we kind of looked back and realized it had been 10 in a row. So we never really got a chance to enjoy that until after the home win against Eastern Washington, which was a championship game for us for regular season, a share of the regular season title. And then we had to hit the reset button and try to do it again in the conference tournament. Unfortunately, we were. And the hard part about college basketball now is you don't really get to enjoy that either. You go to the NCAA tournament, and once it's over for you, depending on how many games, you know, if you can advance or not, you get home and you're now restructuring your roster. Within 24 hours, you're meeting with players to figure out who you can retain and then, you know, who's headed into the portal and who's in the portal and things like that. So for us, it was a little bit of a roller coaster ride. We did enjoy it. We did look back at it for a short period of time, and then we had to kind of retune a new team.
Yeah, but I want to get into the new look roster you got first. But before I do that, I just want to quickly recap that Big Sky tournament championship game against Northern Colorado, because I remember watching that game. It just felt like such an awesome game between two really heavyweight programs in your conference. Just kind of how rewarding was that to kind of go toe to toe with Coach Smiley's program? He's been on my show before. You know, obviously a great coach up there in Greeley. Just kind of how rewarding was that to take them down and kind of come out on top of that? Like I said, a battle between some heavyweights in the conference last year.
Well, they beat us at our place fairly convincingly the first time around. And, you know, they retained a lot of players that were in rotation of a team that tied with us for second place the year before. And so they had some expectations. They had some cohesiveness that we didn't have. And we were talented, but we were still a ton of individuals. We had a bunch of guys that were out in non-conference to injuries. And so we just really didn't get a chance to become a unit. They woke us up. And so when we were able to return to their place, we were a completely different team and kind of caught them off guard a little bit. And that's when we kind of found ourselves. And so in the tournament, we won off our defense the first two games. Third game, we kind of got going offensively. And then in their game was the first night we were able to put it all together. But they're an explosive offense too. You know, we were two teams that were in the top 5 in the country in offensive field goal percentage over 50%. And so it's not a team that you're necessarily going to shut down. You can kind of lower their percentages and make them shoot bad shots, maybe. But most importantly, you're going to have to score to beat them. And it was one of those nights where we were both on fire. You know, we look up and they're shooting 60% from the floor, and we're trying to figure out how to get stops, and we're up 11 points. And that's only because we shot 75% from the floor during that stretch. So I think the game was more entertaining for our fans than it was for us.
Yeah, I remember certainly being entertained by it, and felt like one of those games at the end of it where you feel bad that one of these teams is going to have to deal with the disappointment of not making the NCAA tournament. I want to get into this roster you've got going into this year and kind of what excites you. I mean, obviously you've got a couple key guys coming back. Obviously, leading scorer Money Williams coming back. Just kind of how key was that with him, particularly to get him back after such an important season? I mean, obviously the top reserve in the conference last year. Just kind of what's the next step for him this year after already such an impressive start to his career?
Continued growth. You know, it's been a bit of a roller coaster ride for Money Williams. You know, year one, loss of his father, broken foot in December, so he only played 13 games, comes back year two and had no offseason because of the surgery on the foot. And so really didn't get a chance to get better. Was thrown into the fire early as a freshman and really just had a year and a half of no player development. And so this was his first off season to have a chance to really kind of zone in on some things in terms of areas of growth and an opportunity for us to really figure out how to build around him. And so I think for him this year is an opportunity to, one, show growth, to be a leader, and show his versatility in terms of impacting winning, which he showed signs of that last year. He showed a lot of it. He just had a lot of talent around him. And so he didn't really have to carry the team. He just, he had some big games. Obviously, he had some explosive games, but maybe when he didn't play his best, we were able to win. And I don't know that we're that deep right now. So there'll be a lot more expected of him on both sides of the ball this year. But we've always said family, and we've been a group that has kind of come there for one another through adversity. And I think that played the biggest role in terms of his return, as opposed to what some of these other young men are looking for in the portal.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, I mean, obviously when you're expecting a lot more out of him this year, what is the biggest, throughout your coaching career, what has been the biggest hurdle for guys when they go from being maybe a key reserve to a starter? Like, what is the thing they have to get over to make that jump?
Well, for him, it's a lot different because he was a starter, right? He started the last 7 games before he broke his foot as a freshman. He was a starter for us last year. We made a change to make him sixth man, which was more based around who was going to be on the floor with him as opposed to, earning a starting job. He had started, all the way up until our Montana State game. But I think the biggest jump for him really is just the level of consistency from start to finish, with all young men that go from being underclassmen to upperclassmen and coming back for a third season is being consistent on both sides of the ball and have an understanding of, getting the most out of the people around you. And then I think that's the biggest jump for him. And he's shown signs of that, so we're excited about it.
Obviously, also, Tejon Sawyer is back too. Amari Jedkins, both those guys played some key minutes for you guys at times last year. Just kind of how nice is it to have, as much continuity as possible? You mentioned you might not be as deep as you want to be right now, but how important are those guys going to be, especially early in the year with just knowing the what you guys want to do?
Well, returning those 3 guys is huge because you have some continuity in terms of how you go about things. And so when the guys are in the locker room before practice, after practice, the things that are being said, the things that are being shared are important for leadership. People always think leadership is telling people what to do, but more it's sharing information and giving guys an understanding of how we go about things. And I think that's important. I think it's also important to have guys that know your terminologies and understand your style of play on both sides of the ball. And all 3 of those guys impacted winning, right? And Amari and Tejon's versatility on the front line is huge because both can shoot the ball, both can finish around the basket, both can provide a presence around the rim defensively. So That's a great start for us as we went out and tried to fill those other spots. So we're excited to have, to kind of have those three guys as your base. And then we also had three guys that redshirted last year that have been in the program, right? And Tyler Thompson's only been in the program 1 year, but Chase Henderson and Connor Dick have both been in the program for three. This is the third year in the program. So there's a lot of continuity off the floor in terms of how we go about our business and what's important to us in terms of winning and impacting winning. And then we got a lot of new faces that we just got to educate and try to make them a part of our chemistry and our family.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about Chase and Connor specifically because obviously those guys played a lot as freshmen, and then, like you said, redshirted last year. Have you seen the jump maybe that you wanted to from those guys from 2 years ago when they were playing a lot to where they are going into their third years now?
I have. I think you get more out of a redshirt year when you've experienced playing a little bit, especially at the division level. And I think both of those guys benefited from checking into some games and breaking the sweat and understanding, how we prepare for games, and some of the things that are important to us when it comes to winning, and then using that knowledge in terms of what they work on in the off season. Chase was injured all of last year, so it was harder for him in terms of the physical portion of it, but mentally I think he grew. And both of those guys are really competing right now for keen roles in our 8-9 man rotation. And so I'm excited about their futures, and hopefully they can impact our success early this year.
You mentioned all the newcomers you got. I mean, it's a good mix of guys that were at maybe high major places, didn't get the playing time they wanted to, and then some productive guys that are maybe jumping up a level. I wanted to ask specifically about two guys, Courtney Anderson and Caden Betts, just because I know them pretty well. Courtney played at CU Colorado the last couple of years. Caden Betts is a Colorado native. He spent the last couple of years at Minnesota. Just kind of what have those guys brought over the summer, and now as you're getting ready for the season here, what have you liked about both those guys?
They shoot the ball. Offensively, they really can contribute early in their tenure here. I think the most important thing for those two guys is knocking off the rust. When you've got guys transferring down from the Big 10, Big 12, it's typically going to be guys that did not have a whole lot of playing experience on the floor, and so there's nothing in the stat sheet that tells you what you're going to get, and so a lot of the evaluation is based off of when we recruited them in high school. And I think it's two guys that are hungry to get on the floor and impact the game. They're very selfless in terms of having an understanding that there's multiple people that impact the game and being in those roles in the past, but really looking for keen opportunities. And so we're excited to have those guys touch the floor for us early.
Yeah, I mentioned some of those guys that were really productive at their last schools, like Tyler Isaac, Grant Kepley, Trey Taylor. Just kind of are all the three of those guys that you could rely on just with the production they had the last couple of years and feeling like they probably have some confidence based off what they were able to do at their respective last schools.
Definitely, right now it's very competitive. When you look at all the groups, I would include Brooklyn Hicks with those two guys that you're talking about transferring down, coming from UNLV in the Mountain West.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be very competitive for all. Brooklyn's got the most playing experience at the Division I level. The other two come from a higher level, and then you've got three guys that play a lot that could arguably be in the best players on the teams that they're transferring up from. And so their adjustment to Division I basketball is going to be important. And so I think they all bring something different in terms of their experiences. And the question is going to be who is more prepared mentally and physically, but confidence comes into that too. So we're still early right now in terms of trying to figure out who can carve out what role for themselves. It's very competitive with all of those transfers, but I think all of them have an opportunity to be contributors and crack into that 8-9 man rotation, but all of them won't. And that's what makes this play special is you've got guys that are talented. Competing for opportunities and knowing that not everyone's going to crack into those spots. And I think that makes every day competitive in practice.
One of those guys that definitely has a lot of talent, but might not crack in early. I want to ask about one of your key freshmen with Kenyon Aguino, just obviously, a multi-time Gatorade Player of the Year in New Mexico. I mean, 4 straight state championships. I think he lost, I think you count on one hand the number of games he lost in high school. Just how is his winning attitude added to the locker room right away?
It's incredible. I'd say he's a silent assassin, right? He doesn't have a lot to say. He's a good communicator, but he's found his own niche as a freshman, right? And he's allowing the other guys to be the vocal leaders. But he's in all the right places at all the right times. He understands schemes. You don't have to tell him things twice. He comes from winning. You said it. You can count his losses on one hand. 4 state championships, and player of the year 3 times in the state of New Mexico. So I think he'd be the one that's probably going to be the biggest surprise of all the names you mentioned. And I think it's going to be important for all those upperclassmen to understand how consistent they need to be to beat him out.
And obviously, you guys are getting underway pretty soon here. You got an exhibition against University of Denver at the end of this month. I know Coach Bergstrasser pretty well. Got to spend some time around their program, so that'll be a fun test for you guys or before the season officially gets underway on November 3rd against Northwest Indian College. Obviously, you guys got a couple home games to kick things off, and then you're really challenging yourselves with Stanford on the road, UNLV and A&M all in the month of November on the road. Just kind of talk me through this early portion of the schedule, what you're going to be looking for out of your group, and just kind of what the challenge presents you guys.
It's kind of how we've always done it, right? We'll try to open up with a couple lower level games, get some confidence, but actually really just try to get an opportunity to get as many guys on the floor with the lights bright as possible, so that when you go into these high major games, those same guys have already broken a sweat. You're going to play more guys in both of those games more often than not. And then you're going to have your like opponents usually later in November. And so what's important for us is get as much experience as possible, play at a high level, compete at a high level, because we want to play those games in March. But then when you get into late November, early December, you want to play those like opponents that are going to be similar to what you would see in conference, and try to prepare for those games like you would prepare for conference games. And by that time, you should be able to tighten up your rotation, have a true understanding of what it is you're trying to get out of each guy, and each guy understand what it is we're trying to get out of the group, and win as many of those like opponent games as possible and have confidence going into conference. That's really the biggest thing for us. And then we treat our conference as 2 halves, right? You've got first half where you're just trying to compete for a top 4 spot in the standings. And then the second half, if you're close enough to strike, try to see if you can win a championship. And so we treat all these as different seasons. But the most important piece to November is play at the highest level as possible, try to come out of it healthy, and try to learn as much about your program as possible before you go into conference.
All right, Coach, just one last thing before I get you out of here. I mean, obviously the goal is obviously for you guys to repeat as Big Sky champs, go back-to-back, make trips to the NCAA tournament again. What's going to be the biggest key for you guys when you get toward Big Sky play, like you said, in January, and then as that you split that into 2 halves? What's going to be the biggest key once you get there to defending your title? Because you're going to have that target on your back this year. You know that for sure.
Yeah, we've got to define who we are. We still got a long ways to go to figure out, what our true strengths and weaknesses are as a group, who fits with one another. So once we become a cohesive unit, which is number one, then we got to figure out the formula that wins basketball games for us. And right now we're trying to become the best defensive team we can. If you can build a strong defensive unit, the offense always catches up. You'll find ways to get, guys going and play to the strengths of guys individually to produce offense. But the defensive part is the hardest part. So we need to become a unit, and then we need to figure out how to compete on the defensive side of the ball. If we do that, then we'll give ourselves a chance.
All right, that'll do it, Coach. I appreciate you taking the time. Like I said, opener November 3rd on Monday against Northwest Indian College, and then a tough non-conference schedule for a couple weeks after that. But you guys are after repeating as Big Sky champions, trying to get back to the NCAA tournament. I appreciate the time.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me, and all the best for you going through the hoop season and holidays.
This is the best time of year for me, honestly. We're going to push football aside soon enough as we'll get right back to basketball. So thanks again, Coach.
I appreciate it.
All right, that'll do it from today's episode of Basketball in the Mountains. Thanks again to Coach DeCuire in Montana, the reigning Big Sky Coach of the Year, leader of the Montana Grizz, the reigning Big Sky champions. Best of luck to them this season. And we're going to continue rolling on with our 2025-26 season preview series later this week. Hope to get some more coaching guests on. Like I said at the top of the show, make sure to check out the episodes previewing Wyoming and Utah Valley as well. And we're going to cover just about every team we can here in the Mountain Time Zone ahead of November 3rd for that season opener. So thanks everybody for watching. Thanks again to Coach DeCuire for being our special guest today. And everyone else, stay tuned for what's next.